Hello, friends. This is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and today we're hopping across the pond where I am checking in with the great Andy Eastwood. Andy, how are you today?
Great. All the better for seeing you. Nice to see you.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to have you on today. You are. I just have to say that Andy is one of my personal favorite players. He does a lot of the old-time repertoire that I do, but with a great little a little English tinge to it, as it were. And with that said, would you mind just kicking us off with one of those great old tunes?
Now everybody's got some silly pastime of their own. Some like to mix up with a crowd, some like to be alone. It's no one else's business as far as I can see. But every time that I go out, the people stare at me with me little ukulele in me hand. Of course the people just don't understand. Some say, why don't you watch TV, why don't you read a book? But I get much more pleasure when I'm playing with me uke. Of course I take no notice, you can tell. Oh, mother's sound advice will always stand. She said, my boy, do what I say, you'll never go astray if you keep your ukulele in your hand. Yes, son, keep your ukulele in your hand.
Andy, that was absolutely stellar. And for some of the folks who are not familiar with some of this older music, what was the name of that tune and who really popularized that?
That song is called Little Ukulele, and it was made famous by the great star of British ukulele, George Formby, who was a great movie star back in the 30s. And of course, it's called Little Ukulele, but he mainly played banjolele, which is one of these things, in case anybody doesn't know. And he really made it popular over here, this side of the pond.
Yeah, what really gets me is that Formby's popularity just continued so much further than the first uke wave in the U.S. kind of fizzled out by the mid 30s or so. But over in the UK, you guys were still rocking the uke up until the 70s, especially the banjo uke. Formby was still performing and still acting. And I think that was hugely beneficial to the uke community overseas, something we kind of missed here.
Yeah. Well, over here, this was the uke community, the George Formby Appreciation Society, which started immediately after he died in the very early 60s, is still going. So it's like 1,000 members of the George Formby Society. That has been going now for 59 years, which is when you consider he died when he was 56. So the society has now gone on longer than he ever lived.
Yeah, I mean, and that really speaks to how much of a profound impact he had on this little musical instrument.
Yeah, well, pioneer, complete pioneer, because he was there, and like you say, in that very first wave of players. I mean, the first uke records were in the early 20s. George Formby picked up a uke in 1925 and made his first recording with it 29. So he was really a pioneer. He was also a pioneer in films, because I mean, I think the first talking picture was 1927. I think the first one over here, 29. He made his first film in 1934. So absolutely, like you say, that first wave, pioneering artist.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that you mentioned the first talkie over in the U.S., which was preceded by the Roy Smeck short, The Wizard of the Strings. Also featuring ukulele and tenor banjo as well. And that's something that's always gotten me, because I'm being from Philadelphia. Roy Smeck grew up in Lancaster, which is right down the road from me. So I've always had a high respect for him. He was kind of my local hero, as I was learning this instrument. And it's funny to listen to the old recordings, as they were sitting in the same time period and with mass communication so much less then. But their styles evolved so similarly over the years. Formby, of course, really relied on the split stroke in his solos, but it's silly to listen to the early Smeck recordings and hearing pretty much the same things going on. I've always been curious as to what it would have been like if those two had met and played some tunes together.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And those two certainly have informed all of my right hand technique over the years. And I still have a lot to go with the George Formby stuff. There's just so much to learn. Now, when did you start playing uke? How old were you?
Well, I started, my granddad used to play to me when I was a little kid. He loved the old comic songs and he used to play them. I grew up with them. So he died when I was 6. And just before he died, he gave me a little cheap uke, toy, almost toy, you know, mass-produced Chinese uke. And I started to play it when I just messed around with it, but properly started to play it when I was about 8 or 9, I think. So sort of just over 30 years ago.
And you haven't put it down since then, right?
I've never put it down. I've never had any other job. Yeah. The coronavirus is the first time I've not had any gigs.
It's a weird feeling, isn't it? I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
hence I'm just calling people and talking to them now.
Yeah.
So there's always a good thing. So uke was your first instrument, but you are a multi-instrumentalist. What other instruments do you play? And I'm curious how you think that playing multiple instruments maybe helps you address issues on each individual instrument as seeing things from a different perspective. Yeah,
well, I started to play the violin at school when I was 7 as well. So around about the same time, just slightly before I got to grips with the uke, I studied on the violin. And a lot of the technique transfers, you know, when you think about the hand positions, getting the strings pressed down nicely, getting a good you know, technique. So apart from the strumming, obviously, a lot of that left-hand stuff really transfers well from one to the other. And I think that helps me, you know, in terms of just getting the hands and arms and getting the muscles working in the correct way. And particularly, I mean, the big thing for the technique with most people is getting rid of the tension in the muscles. And I think that's helped me a lot, because you think of the way you get the weight of your arm onto the violin. And I just 90 degrees around the uke, and I think it helped me a lot.
Yeah, and that's something I see common amongst uke players when I have beginner students that come to me and mention, because I'm an upright bass player primarily, so I have the same arm weight thing. You know, my fretting hand, my fingers aren't putting anything down. It's really my back that's pulling everything. And this same way, when you play guitar and uke and horizontal string instruments properly as well, you still have that going on. And I think that's something that gets lost into a lot of beginner players, is that the effort's not coming from here. And in the long run, you can build up a lot more speed and dexterity by having that proper technique from the start, which is, but I've never really thought of it as common between the two instruments, because of the postural differences between them, really. Andy, would you mind playing us another tune?
Yeah, good idea. Let's pick up the uke then. Here's one I was tinkling with a couple of days ago. The old Charlie Chaplin song, Smile. Let's see if I can remember this.
One of my favorites, Andy. One of my favorites.
Smile though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll find the sun comes shining through for you. So light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness, although a tear may be ever so near. That's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.
That's one of those many songs you can't help but smile after hearing that. What a beautiful tune, a lovely melody. I've always loved that one. Besides these older tunes you play, you've also been doing some more contemporary work on the uke in recent years as well. And I know last year you premiered a piece at the Grand Northern Ukulele Festival for string quartet and ukulele, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I really love the oldies, and I love that vintage jazz age, you know, when the uke first appeared. But yeah, I do always try to push the boundaries, as they say, if I can. So a few years back, I did some little classical arrangements for ukulele, which was nice. And then I thought I want to go a bit further than this. And Mary Agnes Crowell, the director of Grand Northern Ukulele Festivals, said, "We'd like you to come back." I've played the festival a couple of times already. It's the biggest one in Britain. And she said, "We'd like you to come back, but with something new." And this idea had always been at the back of my mind, because when I was at college, I used to play violin in string quartets and loved chamber music. So I said, I had this idea floating around at the back of my brain for years that I'd like to combine the uke with the traditional string quartet sound. I just thought they would blend well. Because actually, the idea came to me one day. I was just tuning my instruments before a gig. I had the violin and the soprano uke lying side by side. And I just plucked the A string on the violin and the A string on the uke, and I thought, it's exactly the same. You don't realize how closely related these instruments are.
Sure, yeah.
So I thought, we need to blend this together. This has never been done. So yeah, I wrote the piece. Mary said, "Yeah, let's do it." Commissioned the piece, and it was about 10 minutes long. It's in 3 movements. The piece is called Spacescape, because the theme of it, I did it with a theme, and the interstellar travel is the theme of it, really, because composers have always looked out into nature for inspiration, and I think that today that's where we get the most wonderment from, is looking into the cosmos. So I thought, let's do a space theme, because it's something that's fascinating anyway. And I'd just been reading some of Stephen Hawking, who's just not long before he died, but I was reading some of Stephen Hawking writings about when we travel to another solar system, how it will be little nanotechnology, little tiny craft, packed with nanotechnology. And I thought, okay, the soprano uke can represent the spacecraft, and I'll give it the back of these lovely bowed strings. But I wanted it to be very much an ensemble conception. I didn't want it to be ukulele with string quartet backing. I wanted to make it a proper ensemble. And I really was pleased how it worked out. I think it came out well. I was pleased that it got a good reaction when we premiered it. But we were going to play it again in June at the festival this year, and of course everything's cancelled, so we'll have to wait a little for that. But the recording is there now, so people can get hold of that. It's available as a download.
Very cool. And we'll have a link to Andy's website in the commentary. So I actually have an odd question for you, but have you considered releasing the music for that so that other players across the world could play this piece as well?
Yeah, I need to just do that. I need to just tidy up the all the parts that I gave to the string quartet are quite neat, but some of my part, actually, I haven't got around to tabbing it out. I just read it on proper stave notation.
Yep.
So I need to just tab that, and then I can publish it. Yeah, I just haven't got around to it yet.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would love playing this piece. I know there are actually a lot of crossover players in the uke and string world. I know when I'm at festivals over here in the U.S., I see a lot of cello and violin players who have taken up uke as sort of their chordal instrument, for lack of a better term. So I think it's something that maybe you could get performed throughout the world, which would be pretty cool.
I'd love that. Really love that. Yeah, I'll do.
Yeah, Andy, would you mind playing us one final tune?
Yeah, of course. Well, over there in the US, I'll play an old. I know you love the old standards. The American Songbook, as we call it. So here's one by Hoagy Carmichael. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind, Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pine. Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly. Still, in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Oh, Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
You're just taking all my favorite songs today. You did Smile, and Hoagy Carmichael is probably my favorite American composer of the era. You're really digging into this. Thank you. This is just a great serenade for me, which, I mean, I guess we'll release this eventually, but hey. And Andy, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me and playing a few tunes. I greatly appreciate it. And everyone listening in, I'm going to drop all the links to where you can find Andy's music, including that string quartet, which I'd highly recommend listening to, as well as checking out Andy's videos on YouTube. And he is pretty active on different social media platforms, so you can follow him over there. And as soon as the world reopens, he always has a vast tour schedule up so that you can go see him in person and experience what the ukulele is really like. Andy, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Chris, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's good to meet you face to face.
You as well.
I've been playing for quite a while online, so good to meet you.
And one day we will meet in person. We just never know when that day will be.
I look forward to it.
Indeed. Andy, would you mind playing us a tune out?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.